All right, here we go. Um, all right, everyone, welcome. Hi, welcome to Making the Leap to Director or VP, the skills that nobody teaches you. I'm going to share my PowerPoint screen with you here, so you can see just a few slides I got for you today. Let me know if you can't see that or if there's anything problematic with making the leap. I am going to keep it from, I'm going to keep it out of presentation mode just because I get really stressed out when something takes up the whole screen. Maybe I'm alone on that. Today, we're going to be talking about what makes it so hard when we go about the business of doing this promotion. Again, we know a lot of these tactics. We've read the books, we've read the blog posts. We know what you're technically supposed to do in order to make the leap from director to VP. But it tends to be a relatively fraught and stressful experience for a lot of people. Or even if it's not stressful or fraught for you yet, I hope that today what we talk about really gives you the kind of emotional foundation to navigate this transition with ease and maybe even some joy and fun. So we're going to get into that today. Let's do one last check on people who are late comers here. One more. All right. Hopefully I won't have to skip back and forth between letting people in anymore. All right, great. So I'm Becca, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a leadership coach for what I like to tenderly refer to as underfulfilled overachievers. And what I do is I help them balance a happy life with having a badass career. You'd be shocked to learn that the majority of my clients are women in product, lots of ambitious, super smart people in this cohort. We're going to talk today about one of the most common issues that comes up in the context of my work with these clients, which is leveling up your career from an individual contributor to a director or VP role. Again, most of you are women in product, so I think so anyway, if these familiar faces are any indicator. But to be honest, these tips do extend beyond just the product realm. We'll be using a lot of product examples and all of that, but fundamentally, this is pretty applicable and universal to when you're making this leap to people management. And just for the purposes of this conversation, when we talk about being a director or VP, we really mean either of two things. One is that you have a seat at the strategy table. You're influencing or informing strategic decisions that are being made at the executive level for the company, and or you're managing people. So that's just, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. And there are tactics that we know work to get a promotion. Like again, we've read the books, right? Take on work beyond the scope of your current job, ask for a junior report of your own, take on high visibility products, build a team of your own. Super important, really awesome tactics. And actually there's so many smart people in this room right now. What are some of the strategies or tactics to make this leap, to level up to director or VP that you've heard of, that you think are really smart, maybe some that you are currently trying? Go ahead and enter that into the chat. I'm curious to hear what you guys are working on and working with. Oops, can I get the chat while I'm screen sharing? There we go. Yeah, so Rosa says, making a significant business impact for something you are primarily accountable for, really telling that story of impact. Oh, Jenna, I love this one. Solve something that no one is willing to solve that will have a large impact. Carving out time to socialize what your team has accomplished. Yes, this visibility and also real generosity is something that we'll talk about as one of the kind of like underutilized tactics, I think, that we'll talk about. Successfully launching a new high impact product, like absolutely. Again, your story of impact and your ability to convincingly tell that story with data is kind of the overarching theme. So lots of good strategies here. Use them, take note of them. They're key to this process, but actually not what we're going to be focusing on today. As we just demonstrated, you guys kind of know what you need to do. And so today I want to talk about why these tactics can sometimes feel so damn complicated. And again, kind of like zooming out a little bit, Sorry, one more admission here. Well, the reasons why we find this so complicated kind of comes down to a couple fundamental reasons. These are like the big blockers that I see my clients running into. You just don't ask for what you need. Maybe you're feeling uncomfortable doing that. We find ourselves avoiding difficult conversations or clear conversations about our own advancement with both our team and our bosses. Imposter syndrome, ever heard of it? We get, one of the most common complaints is that we get too lost in the weeds to focus on the big picture. Like, how can we don't have time to think about strategy. We're too busy executing. Or the worst, you just get passed over for the promotion. Somebody else beats you out. So I want you to take a moment and think of a leader that you really admire. And I want you to, in the chat, list some of their traits that make them a boss or a manager, make it a director or a VP. What traits do they embody that you really admire? Go ahead and listen in the chat. And the other thing, the other prompt, they're human, hell yeah. They're consistent. The other thing I want you to think about, how do you think they feel during meetings, during high pressure presentations, during a crisis? I want you to like get in their shoes for a second and imagine how they're feeling that makes them behave the way they do in this admirable way. Amazing answers here. They're good at talking, their communication skills are great, they promote their staff, they really look out for their people. They're persuasive, vulnerable, they lead by example, confident and fair. We'll get deep into this. Oh man, low cortisol and low stress. You are in the right place today. B. Patel, I don't know your first name, sorry. But yeah, they are understanding. They honestly care about the well-being of their team. And yeah, don't play favorites, that fairness. Beautiful answers. So as we can see, right, it's feelings that don't really get talked about when we're coming up with our strategy to make this leap. And we're going to spend most of today talking about emotions and how you can hack them to feel really comfortable and in control of this process. So we can avoid some of these, frankly, self-destructive behaviors that cause us to self-sabotage. All right, so one word that I want to teach you guys that sums up most of these traits that we just discussed: the generosity, understanding, vulnerability, fairness. What makes this so easy for these people that we admire, these leaders we admire? The word is equanimity. If you don't know the definition of this word, don't worry, a lot of people don't. It literally breaks down as a Latin translation for evenness of spirit, equa and anim, even spirit. It's defined as mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation, which work is just a series of difficult situations, if we're honest. And to add some color, I like to think of equanimity as a state of psychological stability, undisturbed by our exposure to our experience of an emotion, pain, or anything else that might cause someone else to lose the balance of their mind. So in Buddhism, this is the Buddhist use of this word. In Buddhism, it's defined as neither a thought nor an emotion, but rather the steady, conscious realization of reality's transcendence. I know this just got really abstract, but bear with me. Equanimity is the ground for wisdom and freedom and the protector of compassion and love. And by the traits that you guys just listed to me, low stress, understanding, caring about their team, equanimity just is the thing that sums all of this up. I'm a huge proponent of it, as you can see. But again, let's kind of bring this down into what it looks like to be equanimous at work, okay? So 4 examples I'll give you. Scenarios we've all probably been in at some point. Your strategic proposal gets overridden because some higher up is playing politics, right? Instead of getting frustrated, you have the equanimity to see what that higher up is actually trying to accomplish for themselves. Everyone does things for a reason. You then revise your strategy to visibly make both of you successful. Turns out that's actually the clearest and lowest friction path to your own success. A bully at work has it out for you. Damn, that sucks. But hey, instead of making it mean that something is wrong with you or feeling overwhelmed by anxiety every time they walk into a room, you actually have the equanimity to slow down and see their pain That is some serious compassion. That is some serious empathy, right? It doesn't excuse their behavior, but at the end of the day, like, no, bullies are not happy people. Bullies are not secure people. And seeing that is a superpower. All right, so another example, your idea that you fought so hard to turn into a reality becomes a success. This is something we already went over. Guess what? You have the equanimity to give all the credit to your boss and your team, because you know that what goes around comes around, usually much faster than we expect. And we don't need to, while we want to work on high visibility projects, we don't really need to toot our own horn. And the last example for us, as you ascend into management, you're going to run into this all the time. Your new direct report comes up with a plan you're pretty sure is going to fail. This is one of those things where, trust me, anyone here love being in control? Just taking a shot in the dark here, saying that's most of us. The big challenge, the growth edge for all the leaders that I work with and see, is instead of tightening your grip on their project and becoming the kind of micromanager that we all claim to hate, you lightly coach them, do the best you can, but ultimately have the equanimity to give them room to fail. So this may all seem like a really tall order, and the reality is that it is. When we think about, it is for anyone who hasn't done a lot of work on their own emotional agency and their equanimity. But guess what? This is the task. This is the task ahead of us, to be a great manager. As we ascend to higher levels of seniority, ignore the units on this x-axis, I was just spinning up this graph. But as you ascend from IC to director to VP to CPO, basically you're just encountering more complexity and more ambiguity. That's it. And when you think about incredibly complex, incredibly ambiguous problems, how does that make you feel? Probably anxious, if you're like most people. And it's messy. This work is messy. And what's the messiest thing of all? Well, people. So here's the big lesson. Queens play the long game. Equanimity implies a connection, an emotional connection to the big picture, to the long game. And when we can be responsive instead of reactive, being at the mercy of our emotions, we stay in control, both in crisis and as we take on big challenges like getting a promotion. And so in the context of getting a promotion to a director or VP specifically, there's 3 factors that I think are most important. 1, emotional regulation. 2, setting your current team up for success. And 3, eliciting intrinsic motivation in yourself and others. The 2 and 3 are going to be afterthoughts compared to number 1. Number 1 is the thing that I'm most passionate about. It's the thing that I train all of my clients on. And if you're interested in learning more about this and going deep on all of these skills, you can ask me, just ping me about my group program, Fearless Femmes, which is kicking off on May 19th. We go really deep and become experts in all this stuff. So again, emotional regulation, by far the most important part. I'll give you an example of why. Feedback is another, emotional regulation is defined as the ability to stay calm, cool, and collected, acknowledge an emotion without acting on it instantly, noticing emotions without judgment in others, maintaining your curiosity, being like, that's an interesting emotion coming from that person. And a good example in practice, again, is situations where we have to give feedback. So the question is, have you ever given or maybe even received feedback where you could just kind of tell that there was this vibe of the person, they wanted to help you out. They wanted to give you feedback and help you grow, but also maybe they kind of wanted to let you know that they were right. Maybe there was a slight alternative motive there. Again, if we're really honest with ourselves and tuning into how we're feeling in this feedback, in this feedback process, we've probably experienced the full range here. And in feedback best practices, you have processed all of your emotions about what happened. Let them go completely so that it will, obtain full emotional regulation and equanimity around the situation so that you can be genuinely invested in being of service to this person. It makes all the difference. That's how every feedback book you'll read basically is going deeper into that primary thought. You have to be regulated and come from an authentic place for it to go well. And so if you're not coming from a regulated place, people will know that you're bullshitting. You've seen this. You've experienced this on the receiving end too, if you think about it. It won't matter what words you say. People can tell that you're bullshitting. So anyone, any idea why this is? This is an actual biological phenomenon, it turns out, called co-regulation. If you're a parent, you're probably familiar with this. This is how we teach children to regulate their own emotions when they have zero skills to do so. We're social animals, right? Our body language, heart rate, temperature, hormonal levels, all of these parts of our bodies are in communication 24/7 with all of the bodies around us. If you're in quarantine right now, one of the reasons why you're probably feeling a little weird is because of the complete isolation from other bodies, especially New Yorkers. Am I right? Like, never thought I would miss the subway. But other bodies have a way of regulating our own. If someone else feels safe, we feel safe. If someone else feels in danger, we feel in danger. This is actually key to our survival as a society. Oops, sorry, I lost my place here. This means that when you're regulated, you can also influence how other people feel. This is where it comes down to getting the promotion. People take action from emotions, not thoughts. We love to think that we're these intellectual, brilliant creatures who, act all rationally and from logic all the time. Science knows that that's just not true. We take action from emotion. This includes you, as you're going about the business of taking the action you need to take to do the things to get a promotion. It also influences the actions of your boss when they're deciding whether or not to give you the promotion. It is what your team is acting from when they're giving you referrals or positive feedback to influence this promotion track. People take action from emotion. So emotion is the main thing that matters in this situation. So the thing that's making this process complicated, again, humans and feelings. So we were talking about emotional regulation. What's going on when we take all these self-sabotage tactics? The answer is the thing that makes it hard is emotional dysregulation. So obviously it makes sense, emotional regulation versus dysregulation, of which there are two types. There is hyperarousal dysregulation and hypoarousal dysregulation. Take a look at these symptoms and see if you can identify any. Actually, if you feel comfortable sharing what your big ones are, type it in the chat. Most people we all have both of these, hyper and hypoarousal responses. Most of us are dominant in one versus the other. Hyperarousal, you can sort of see as a fight or flight response. This is our somatic nervous system kicking us into hyperarousal. Hypoarousal is the freeze and faint. Think deer in the headlights or a possum playing dead. Really primal, important survival mechanisms that take these two things, or take these two forms. So reactive, defensive, anxiety. Anxiety is my big one. I get self-centered. Suddenly, I make everything about me, everything about being my fault, about my shortcomings. Sound familiar? And when we think of imposter syndrome is basically just really your special sauce, your unique amalgam of these dysregulated emotions, these dysregulated symptoms. That's right, hyperarousal is a biological event. So, oops. All right, so here's the thing. What do we do about that? Great, it's biology. Does that mean that we're helpless? Turns out absolutely not. This is one of the most harmful myths that we lean on in a way that gives away our control, our responsibility, and our power when it comes to self-regulation. When we experience an emotion, we're at its mercy until it decides to move on. This is definitely how most of us spend our lives, is at the mercy of our emotions unless we focus on building these skills. The fact is that we have the ability to control our emotions from moment to moment. Seriously, if you want to feel something different, you can. We're going to talk exactly about how here in a second. So basically, as I like to say, it's body all the way down. Emotions are a physiological signal from our bodies that gets interpreted in our brain as depression, love, anxiety, contempt, whatever. And suddenly, if we can see it that way, we can suddenly see why equanimity is so hard. This bully makes us feel ashamed. The higher up makes us feel overlooked. A report's mistakes make us feel exposed, misunderstood, unsafe. This is actually our survival instincts kicking in. It's inappropriately, but again, this is the system that has kept us alive for this long. If our bodies don't feel safe, you can forget the long game. You can forget being queen because our nervous system will prioritize us staying alive unless we intervene with our higher consciousness. So this knowledge alone is super powerful. Just being able to be aware of the fact that your body is, or that your emotions are actually coming from a physiological symptom or a physiological signal from your body, allows you the space and the time to actually pause before just, reacting to it almost mindlessly. But I'll give you 4 things that I really want you guys to start practicing as you go about the business of these tactics that we're talking about that are inherently high risk. They're inherently a little scary. Our survival instincts are going on at full throttle as we go about taking on this challenge. So here are the things I want you to do. When you notice discomfort of any kind, what that looks like for you, anger, reactiveness, defensiveness, anxiety, all these symptoms that you guys listed, I want you to pause, and if you have the wherewithal, name the feeling. Those of you who have worked with me have seen this feelings wheel. It is one of what I think the best products of all time. It's amazing. You can find it on feelingswheel.com. And literally there's a website called feelingswheel.com. And you can it helps solve the free recall problem for those of us who have a little bit of a harder time just naming our emotions out of the blue. This gives you a very simple and frankly pretty comprehensive list of possible emotions you might be feeling. Again, as coaches like to say, cheesily, name it to tame it. I also want you all to identify your symptoms of dysregulation as you go through the process, as you're adopting these tactics and taking these risks and expanding the scope of your responsibilities. What happens? When you think about it, does your heart race? Do you get tongue-tied in meetings? Do you withdraw and avoid and self-criticize rather than getting your work done? What are your symptoms? Acknowledge them. And then develop a ritual that physiologically calms you down. And we'll get into those specific tactics here in just a second. And here's the best part that I want you to actually enjoy as you go through this process. I want you to watch others calm down as a result of you taking action to self-regulate. This is one of those amazing things that we can hack as people who are more attuned and emotionally aware. Yeah, you can straight up influence the behavior and the emotions and thereby the behavior of the people around you. It's some manipulative shit. It's great. It's super powerful. It can be used for good or evil. It's no joke. So we use it for good. So the actual interventions for this can be either something that you adopt on a daily basis as a daily ritual to stabilize your baseline regulation, or point interventions for when you are feeling like totally like out of whack. To soothe hyperarousal, there's a couple of strategies that I love. I picked this up from my coaching colleague, Iris McAlpin. She studies and works with trauma. So if you guys are interested in trauma or getting help from her Instagram is at Iris McAlpin. She's amazing. But this list we put together. VU breathing. That's literally kind of a foghorn sound on your exhale. I love it. You can't really do it in a meeting, but if you're at home alone, which most of us are now, it's kind of the sound where on your exhale you go, VU. It literally massages this nerve that's causing our instinctive survival response. Really, really soothing. Sloth breathing, very simple. Your exhales are longer than your inhales. Blobbing, kind of what it sounds like. Lay down on the couch or your bed and relax every single muscle in your body. Just blob and let it all go. Stay there for a few minutes. Progressive muscle relaxation, that's clenching and releasing, starting from the feet all the way up. Saunas, hot tubs, great. Restorative yoga, amazing. Super calming to really physiologically take your hyperarousal down back to baseline. It works instantly. For elevating yourself out of hypoarousal symptoms, Wim Hof breathing, incredibly effective. Give it a shot, actually. Those of you who are science-minded and curious, it gives you an absolute rush of energy. It's bizarre, especially when you pair it with the cold shower. That's the Wim Hof, full method. It will wake you the hell up in the morning, that's for sure. Kundalini yoga is really great. And balanced breathing, like 6 count in, 6 count out, is really good for maintaining any balance that you have. So check these out. And again, if you guys want to go deeper into these strategies and how to use them, we work on all of this in Fearless Femmes, and it's core to my coaching. So let me know if you're interested. All right, so from this really equanimous place where we have access to being in control, calm, understanding, compassionate, connected to the big picture whenever we want, guess what we're able to do? Prioritize really efficiently. We don't feel jerked around by people dropping ideas on us or giving us competing priorities. We're actually able to execute with clarity and laser focus on our goals, which, by the way, is what it takes to set our team up for success. One of the most common pitfalls I find is people just being jerked around in a bunch of different directions and randomizing your team. And if you want to deliver this super high impact result, we got to put the kibosh on that. The other part that I'll sort of mention, one of the most effective habits of people looking for a promotion that I never see anyone talking about is making your boss look good. And I mean really good. Like when you are ostensibly working on something or an impact metric that they're responsible for at a high level, man, really make sure that it resonates with them and what it is that they're trying to achieve. And that promotion will be right around the corner. Also for your team, when you are able to create a psychologically safe space for your team, an emotionally safe space, failure, AKA learning and resilience, as we know in product, there's no such thing as failure, only more data. You are able to actually create the kind of innovative breakthroughs that the best companies see when we've got this space to try things and take risks. This is just an energy, a baseline space that you create through your own emotional balance and emotional regulation for your team. Then we get to intrinsically motivate yourself and your team. Shocker, it turns out people are really good and faster at the things that they're good at and like. So being able to understand what those things are for you, understanding what really gets you revved up, what gets you super engaged, and picking those projects will make you more successful in the long run. This may seem obvious, but again, it's something we have to really take control of. The same goes for laying the tracks out in front of your team members. The point here, again, to make your team members super successful, you need to understand what they want to learn. What really makes them get up in the morning, and make sure that they're doing the kind of work that really energizes them. This may be something that maybe they know, maybe you can have an explicit conversation about. Also, sometimes you just kind of have to figure it out, especially if you're working with people who are more junior. You have to sense what's going on, sense what's making them anxious or happy. And the same goes for praise. You know what to praise them for and how, based on all these emotional sort of all these nonverbal cues that are going on. So let's see what's next. So basically what I want you guys to really take away from this, confidence is something that I haven't actually talked about explicitly in this deck yet, because confidence is actually just a byproduct of equanimity. It's one of many positive byproducts of equanimity. When you think about someone who's confident, what you actually see is somebody who is relaxed in the face of adversity, someone who generally is connected to the big picture so that they don't freak out or sort of lose control, and nothing shakes them, right? They know that they have all the resources that they need, and if they ever don't, they know that they can ask for them. So this is the emotional track that I want you guys to really focus on to help you move through this process with joy and ease. Because if we're not having a good time, then what's the point? All right, so that's it for me talking at you. Any questions that you guys want to write in the chat about this material or anything else that I talked about, or I'll do the coaching with you individually, live in person. But first, any questions you just want me to answer kind of one off? Go ahead and enter them in the chat.